The cabinet is just a kind of stage theatre, and actually officials in the cabinet office have already decided it all.
I'm Bev Turner, and I hope you're sitting comfortably, because I think Dominic Cummings, the man who was chief advisor to Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, during 2019 to 2020, has just revealed that the deep state is running this country, and that our political system is therefore a complete sham. I think that's what he just said.
The person in so if you think of two roles, right? Foreign Secretary in Great Britain and the private secretary in the PM's office responsible for foreign affairs, an official whose name has never been in the newspapers. That person was like 10 times more powerful and important than the Secretary of State was. And I think this is something which people just don't really realise. And it's part of like how the whole system has become fake. So you have fake meritocracy, fake responsibility, and then fake cabinet government. So they all walk up Downing Street, the cameras work, they pose, they smile, ha, I'm going into the most powerful meeting, aren't I great? But it's all nonsense. The cabinet is just a kind of stage theatre. And actually officials in the cabinet office have already decided it all. When you sit in Whitehall now, right, in meetings, they are literally scripted. So when the Prime Minister has a meeting with ministers, what happens is that before the Prime Minister has that meeting, officials go into the Prime Minister's study and they give him a folder. And in the folder at the front is a thing called Chairman's Notes. And that's the script, and that's what the Prime Minister reads out. And the conclusions of the meeting are in the Chairman's Notes, drafted before the meeting happens, right? So the Prime Minister says, hello, Secretary of State, blah, 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 and then all these officials sit around the sides on chairs around the edge of the room. And then the MP, the Secretary of State, will look down at their folders because they've all got their scripts, right? And this is why I use the NPC meme, right? Because then the Prime Minister reads out, well, we're here to discuss blah, blah, and then he goes around the room, and then the Secretary of State for Justice or the Foreign Secretary reads out his bullet points, and then he reads out their bullet points, and then if anyone goes on script, you see the officials sort of go, and then look over at the other official on the side of the room, and I don't know. That means we'll come back to that after the meeting and make sure that that doesn't happen. And then at the end, it's fascinating, great discussion. Thank you so much for your wonderful, insightful, original contributions. And then he reads out the conclusions which are all drafted in advance. And it sounds like a parody, but it is literally how the British state functions.
This is almost too much for my brain to take in. He just said the quiet bits out loud. But what if that is all a facade? And what if it happens in countries all across the world? What if it always has? How many actors reading from a script have become world leaders at the behest of a deeper, darker set of forces? Did it start with Ronald Reagan, continue through Tony Blair, no stranger to acting at university, and lead on to, of course, President Zelensky? And are the politicians themselves in on it? Do they know they are there in name only, possessing merely the power to change the toner in the photocopier rather than change the tone of political debate in a way that they, rather than their handlers, would like? This is how Cummings, who genuinely had a close-up view, surmises the arrangement.
And the MPs are happy with that, right? Well, how does the psychology of it work? The officials are happy because they have almost all the real power. The Cabinet Secretary is now 100 times more powerful than any Cabinet Minister apart from the PM. And the MPs are happy because this whole system pretends that they're in charge. So both sides are basically happy with the fake version of the government.
To hear this from the horse's mouth beggars belief, and it leads to many more questions than it answers. Look at this photo of Bill Gates at Downing Street. This was taken just days before Rachel Reeves announced a crippling inheritance tax on farmers, which would see thousands of them forced to sell to pay a huge chunk of cash to the government. Who owns most farmland in America? That's right, Bill Gates. Funny that. He's not raising organic cows, of course. He's working on fake meat and rearing insects so that we, the poor people, can eat locusts while he dines on steak. And of course, Gates and co want to save the world, you know they do, via wind turbines and solar panels. Just don't ask what happens to these non-recyclables when they break down. So I received this message on social media this week. It's a letter from a property company to a British farmer, the likes of which they haven't received before. The letter kindly, beseechingly offers to buy up their farm on behalf of a client. The client is apparently a forestry company who want to plant trees, which is just lovely, isn't it? How very altruistic of them. We need more trees. Now, you might see this as simply the commercial wheel of fortune turning towards a greener future. I see the vultures circling over our countryside as it tries to take its last breaths. And that's not going to be another wannabe dairy farmer looking to set up a little farm to leave to his grandchildren. It probably isn't even a dedicated forestry company, but a forestry company attached to a much less acceptable business in the world of ESG, acronym alert, environmental and social governance, the virtue signalling, conscience clearing, DEI box ticking exercise that businesses must do to borrow money from banks who, you know, own patents to things like green technology required to fulfill your ESG obligation. And this in itself is part of that deep state machine. A cabinet minister who is handed a sheet of a script on their way to a meeting. And you know the only way that system works is for people to stay quiet, to worry about their own mortgages, as anybody would. I know it's difficult, but they need to speak up. It turns out that MPs might just be the weakest and most spineless of them all. Hot on the heels of Gates and Downing Street, we were then treated to this image. Senior executives from BlackRock, one of the world's most controversial companies, with an almost monopolistic grip on financial power. Sitting down opposite Keir Starmer and Chancellor Rachel Reeves in Downing Street. Looks like they picked the best room with the nicest wood panelling in which to tug their forelocks and doff their caps at Larry Fink & Co. So what's happening here? Let's give Starmer and Rachel from accounts the benefit of the doubt and conclude that the government believes that private investment is the key to driving economic growth, in which case they will be inevitably reliant on the world's big money machines such as BlackRock. They already developed this relationship whilst in opposition, and it's clearly got cosier since the party entered government. Larry Fink made a star turn at Labour's investment summit in the autumn and posed for pictures with the Prime Minister when he visited New York. So, I bring you back to Dominic Cummings' line: fake meritocracy, fake responsibility, and a fake government. And why isn't Dominic Cummings' revelation on the front page of every newspaper? Why isn't the headline, "Your democracy is pure theatre"? In a nutshell, it's the banks and the global clubs, the WEF, the Trilateral Commission, the UN, etc., who are all running the global playbook. There are senior puppets, Tony Blair, Jacinda Ardern, Justin Trudeau, and so on. Beneath them, those who know they're doing someone else's bidding, the big-name globalist MPs who swan around the world basking in the reflection of billionaires, like the unpopular boy at school suddenly taking the prom queen on a date. That's Starmer, Reeves, before them Jeremy Hunt, Sajid Javid, you know the type. And beneath this tier, the lowly backbenchers, who might actually have no idea at all that they're being used. They like being a bit influential on a local level, and they probably do some good in their own hometowns. But they really like feeling powerful when sitting with the big boys talking about climate change, vaccines, or pandemics. Am I right?